So thanks a lot, guys, for taking the time to join us today for this. I think this is the first masterclass of this season's MVB program, and today we have a very special guest, Josh Neuroth from Anker. Um, he'll be sharing more details in terms of what he wants to share. But the theme, I believe, is unfolding of the Web 3.0 economy.
Great. Well, thank you guys for having me. Yeah, so just a bit, about me. I've been in product management, building digital products for over 10 years now. I started off as a front-end engineer, then I worked in New York City in design agencies as a UX designer for many years. And the last probably 8 years now, I've spent in product management. Absolutely love building. I know a lot of the projects here in incubation are building their products right now, and I think there's never been a more exciting time to build, in the web, especially with Web3. So, at Anker, we're an infrastructure company. We have several different solutions. We have tools for developers. We have a lot of projects building on us in the Web3 ecosystem right now, and then we have a whole liquid staking product line as well. So, we're excited to help support the Web3 ecosystem. And what's great about our platform is, every use case in Web3 needs access to nodes. And I think we're going to talk a bit about that today, but I'm excited to share.
Thanks, Josh. Sounds really great. Please begin whenever you feel comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to share my screen, and I want to show you guys a couple things here tonight. So the first is that I'm going to be, let me know if you can see this, Julian.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so these are basically in order to talk to the blockchain, any information that your project needs to gather from, or to say you're building a wallet app, or maybe you're building a decentralized exchange, you need to talk to the blockchain. And the way that you're going to do that is through something called a remote procedure call, which we just have the kind of industry has standardized around calling it the RPC. RPC is not unique to Web3, but the Web3 ecosystem has really adopted it, right? And you need this RPC API in order to connect to the underlying nodes that essentially run the blockchain, right? And so anyone can run a node for the blockchain. You can run an Avalanche node, a Binance Smart Chain node, you can run a Phantom node, but when you start building production grade Web3 dApps and applications, what you're really going to need is high performance infrastructure where there's a whole cluster of nodes, running in order to do that. And so something that, we've done with Anker is we've basically built these node clusters that have a very simple endpoint that, developers and projects can query against, right? So I want to talk a bit about that. Here you can see this address here in my web browser, anchor.com/protocol/public. We have a whole suite of chains that you can connect directly to. What's great about this is not only can you query information directly, these are all the mainnets here from these chains, right? But you can use a button like this to add this chain to MetaMask, right? And so, if you're watching this content tonight and you're not necessarily maybe building a project, but you are a DeFi user, you can absolutely use Anchor Protocol here, by adding this RPC to set up MetaMask, for connecting to the blockchain. So I'm going to just do that real quick here. I might have to switch my screen share. And so I just clicked that button, and what you're not seeing, I'm going to re-switch this, is you'll see that let's go to this. You'll see now, you should see the MetaMask notification popping up here. And allow the site to switch your network, and it just makes a one-click easy to get MetaMask set up. There's no settings that you have to do, so I can switch that network, and now my MetaMask is going to be connected to Binance Smart Chain. So now I can look at all my transactions on Binance Smart Chain or send assets there, right? So just an example of how that infrastructure is used, for an everyday use case, right? So to go back here, I want to talk a little bit about this. We'll take Binance Smart Chain and talk a bit about this. So basically, like a key problem, I think, in the Web3 ecosystem right now, if you were listening to what I said earlier, is that the blockchain itself is a decentralized system, which means that anyone can run a node. There's hundreds of nodes running on the blockchain. But like I said, when you start building very like high scalable infrastructure, you're going to need a cluster of nodes. And so what we've seen over the last couple of years is lots of service providers have launched, node as a service. And so we compete with companies on the Ethereum side, like Infura and Alchemy, and on Binance Smart Chain infrastructure, we're competing with, other, Web3 API and Chainstack and QuickNode and whatever. But one thing we've been doing with Anchor Protocol is, instead of just building like a centralized service provider, we're using our own protocol to basically incentivize the nodes. And so to keep that decentralization there in the network, you can see there's all these nodes that are running here, kind of powering this. And we have a lot of community members now that are running nodes for Anchor Protocol and earning out Anchor tokens for that. So that's kind of what Anchor does in a nutshell. Like I said earlier, we have effectively, we have like a whole staking solution as well. We also run one of the validators for Binance Smart Chain, one of the 21 validators. But very simply put, projects can benefit from, working with us. DeFi users can benefit from, using our RPCs in, for their DeFi users, and also being able to just have this like instant on infrastructure for all these different chains. So as one of the things we've seen is, like, we are working with a project called Beefy Finance, which if you go to their website, you'll see they've integrated with, a dozen or so blockchains. And this is like a great tool for them because they can go multi-chain very quickly. They don't have to worry about the nodes. They can just start hitting these public endpoints and start querying information. And I can actually show you guys an example of that if you'd want tonight. Is there any thoughts or questions on what I just said? I just saw a question about IPFS. We are working on IPFS right now to integrate that as well. So it's something we're interested in doing and making that easier, but we don't have it live today. I'm going to go to the Anchor docs next, which if you can find this at docs.anchor.com. And in order to query information, directly from the blockchain, most of the chains you've seen here on the kind of these logos, except for like Solana, and Celo, I guess, but well, Celo is actually EVM now, are Ethereum virtual machine compatible, right? And so, Solana uses kind of its own native thing, but chains like Arbitrum, Phantom, Binance Smart Chain, Ethereum, they all use kind of the Ethereum standard. And so if you go to our docs, there's many places you can see this. You can see it the Binance Smart Chain official documentation. You can also see this with Ethereum official documentation, but these are like effectively the method calls that you use to query information. And so what projects do is, when they're building, you're going to use kind of these method calls like ETH call to send transactions to the blockchain, right? And so I'm going to open up my terminal window here and share this, but basically I'm just going to, for the sake of this, I'm going to use a curl command like this one right here. So we're going to copy this, and this has an endpoint already in it, but I'm going to show you how to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Now, hold on, I'm going to, and then if you remember this public endpoint, you can just copy and paste it. So remember that here, because I'm going to show you this in a second. So let me stop presenting. I'm going to reshare a different window here for terminal. All right. You guys see my terminal screen yet? It looks like it's starting here. All right, so we're going to put our curl command, and we're going to ask the blockchain what the current blockchain is, or the latest block. So if you remember how I was talking about that public endpoint there, I'm going to put that here, rpc.anchor.com/BSC, and then I'm just going to hit enter, right? And then you see that this is the latest block on the blockchain. Of course, you can convert that to integer format and see the actual block number. but I've just made a call to the blockchain, you know, without having to do any kind of like sign up or credit card payment or anything like that. Right there, you're talking directly with the blockchain, which is pretty cool. You know, so you guys are all able to do this and start playing around with it. You know, if you're interested in getting, if you're not like a DevOps person or a developer, you know, you can go out and try some of these and start playing around with it. Or if you are a developer, you probably already know, you know, how to curl things and how to start integrating like Web3.js or whatever. So, um, you know, that's a little bit on like multi-chain infrastructure. And so I'll talk a bit more about like maybe some of the challenges in the space right now as well as we, you know, investigate kind of multi-chain. So another kind of problem that I think most of us should be aware of if you're in the space is that a lot, you know, different networks, different underlying blockchains do not really talk to each other, right? And so Ethereum does not talk to Binance Smart Chain. Ethereum does not talk to Phantom, you know. And so something that Anker's working on is we're working on like making deploying and multi-chain easier. We're not only like an infrastructure provider, but starting to get into some of the multi-chain bridges. We have our Anker bridge coming out soon that helps, you know, transfer assets across chain, you know, and make it easier and easier to build on the multi-chain space, right? So that's definitely a problem that I think, you know, people will, including us, will be working on here. So a couple of things to talk a little bit about, you know, talking about nodes on this chat here that we see different chains have different performances, right? And so, you know, to give you guys kind of an estimate here, Ethereum is doing at the moment around 20 transactions per second across the whole world, which seems really slow, right? Because you'll notice that it's high gas fees because it's not very fast. And Binance Smart Chain is doing about 200 transactions per second, and then we have Solana. I think the latest stat was around 4,000 transactions per second. Of course, the official marketing says it's more like 60,000, which will go up over time. So something that, that means is the more nodes or the more transactions per second the underlying blockchain can do, basically the bigger the hardware requirements, right? And so to run an Ethereum node, you can run an Ethereum node on like a Raspberry Pi or your home computer even, if you want to run your node yourself. But to run a Solana node, because of those speed requirements, you need a pretty sizable enterprise grade server, right? And so one of the things that Anker is doing with Binance Smart Chain in particular is we're working on, this new node client that's going to make the underlying blockchain work a lot better, and that's called the Aragon update. And so, right now we've seen over the last year, Binance Smart Chain has been growing a lot, especially in emerging markets, and the transactions per second have been increasing, right? And in order to accommodate that increase in performance, the nodes have to get better, the node client software has to get better, and that's another thing that we're working at Anker through the Aragon update, and that's coming out in the next couple of weeks in an open source format for anyone to use. So, pretty exciting stuff on that. I love seeing how much, this is getting adoption, on some of this stuff. So, so I think, generally what we see is, a couple, like there's kind of a couple use cases that I think we could talk about, for projects that are building, right? So we have at Anker, we have a lot of market research and analytics applications. One of our customers is DeFi Pulse. Some of you are probably familiar with DeFi Pulse. DeFi Pulse, and we have another customer, Flipside, that are doing analytics on the blockchain. And to do that, you need something called archive mode. So you need a complete historical copy of the blockchain really to produce analytics and to trace back wallet addresses and produce, those graphics, right? And so, for those projects, you need archive mode. That's included on most of these RPCs here. And then, if you're just building like a decentralized exchange or your primary goal is to facilitate transactions, you don't need archive mode. You just need the access to the regular, what's called full nodes, which are all here. You can build directly on those. And like I said earlier, if you're doing something in gaming, you're probably just doing transactions. And so, you just need access to this regular RPC. So I see a couple questions that came through here on the chat. How Daniel Jan asks, how resilient is Anker's multi-cloud blockchain infrastructure? As we've all known, Infura went down during a global AWS outage. Does Anker leverage on private cloud infrastructure in addition to adopting public cloud vendors? Great, that's a great question, Daniel. So we have built not only distribution, but decentralization into our network. And so believe it or not, almost none of the nodes that are powering these public RPCs here are in AWS. And so we've kind of done that for altruistic reasons, also cost reasons. And so Anker has a long history. Our initial thesis was building kind of this cloud for Web3. We don't really talk about cloud because it's such a Web2 term, but we work with a lot of what are called co-location data centers and bare metal providers. There's like a couple dozen now that we work with, and we have nodes all over the world. Like on our Binance Smart Chain, infrastructure here, you can see how distributed this is. We have stuff in Asia, North America, Europe, Australia, we just announced that we are supporting South America. So like we've seen amazing adoption in South America. And what that means is because we have a geo-localized infrastructure, when we launch nodes or when our community launches nodes for these protocols in those locations, it means the latency and the speed of that user experience gets better for those users. So like, I think I just looked at some stats. We're serving like over 1 billion requests per month from Brazil now. Argentina has a much smaller population, but they're doing like 700 million requests per month. And so we just announced that we're launching nodes down in South America and several countries. That's going to help the experience. And so, to be honest with you, like if we were using AWS or one of our data center partners went down, it wouldn't affect the network at all because we have such good diversity there. So, it's a lot more complicated, the architecture we have, than just like what you were talking about with Infura, but it's much more resilient. We've tried to preserve that decentralization of the blockchain itself. So I see another question. Is it possible to perform chain forking while building in hard hat? I don't believe so. I don't understand this question. If you're trying, usually for forking of things, you'd probably want to be running your own nodes and have direct control over the nodes if you're doing that kind of stuff. But this is pretty, these are mainnet nodes. I also want to mention that if you're doing development, you're probably going to use a test net to get started. And so these are all public RPCs. Anchor, we're launching testnets publicly for this, but we have kind of like our centralized API service as well. It's available at anchor.com, and we do have free access to testnets there as well. So if you're developing and you're doing it on the testnet, you can also use our infrastructure for testnets. Does Anchor support light nodes? Sort of. It's we're giving you an endpoint to a cluster of nodes, and a light node just means that usually there's many different meanings depending on which chain you're working with. A light node just means that you only have like maybe the latest 10,000 blocks stored on the node, versus an archive node would store every block directly on the hard disk of the node, right? And so light nodes are in many cases are integrated into this, and you could use those. But like I said earlier, we support both kind of what's called the full nodes, light nodes, and the archive nodes are all in the clusters. So the architecture takes care of that, directly on that. So yeah, you'll have to try on. I'm looking at your question, Banat, on the forking. You probably are able to do it. I'm not going to try it here, but if you want, you can literally load up this. I'll post this in the chat right now here, and you guys can try some of these. And I'm, absolutely would love your feedback on this. We just announced, by the way, you'll see that this is version 2. So, what we started with on Anchor kind of version 1 was just like a centralized service provider. And so our new architecture is all decentralized, right? Where the community members can run the nodes. So we've, rolled out a lot of updates, but if you run into any issues, I'd love to, hear about them. And I think the team's gonna post my social stuff here later as well. How does the Anchor bridge work? Okay, so it's not technically announced yet, but I'll give you guys a little preview. There's a couple things we're doing with it, transferring funds, but effectively, if you have, I'll give you a use case. If you have USDT, a stable coin, Tether stable coin on Binance Smart Chain, it's not the same thing as like running USDT on Ethereum. There's the ERC20 version on Ethereum and there's BEP20 version on Binance Smart Chain, right? And so our bridge, basically we take a deposit and then we are going to release a deposit in, the Ethereum version. And so, it has to be very secure. And by only focusing on like a stable coin like that and making it very simple, we can track that and make it very reliable. But I think one of the things, that we're working on is this ability to kind of move funds with code, right? And go multi-chain with code. And so, moving assets multi-chain today is rather clunky. It's a lot of using exchanges or dexes or sending transactions through MetaMask, using the UI like you saw me earlier. I opened up MetaMask. And long term, this is just going to get easier and easier with APIs. And that's a big problem or big opportunity that we're addressing in the near future. So pretty excited about that, but I don't have much to show you guys yet on that. So that's something that's coming down the road. All right. Okay, so let me talk a bit about, I think, you have, let's talk a bit about like how much infrastructure you need to kind of launch your project. So we see, a lot of our, in Anchor version 1, we charge kind of based on the amount of requests that you make to the blockchain. Our competitors like Alchemy, Infura also charge based on how many requests you need. For most developers just kind of getting started, you're going to be fine with probably several 100,000 requests per day, for your project. We see, these dexes like I was looking at, I think Spooky Swap on the Phantom ecosystem, they're doing like 250 million requests every single day to the blockchain, right? And so you can think about it, they're literally needing like many nodes, just like a whole cluster of nodes just dedicated, to their infrastructure. And they are, by the way, a paying Anchor customer for Spooky Swap. But yeah, so you can start, you start, and what we have here with what I'm showing you on my screen share is infrastructure that scales with you. So, you don't have to really think about the amount of requests you're using on that. I saw another question here from Captain Sam. Will the Anchor bridge be NFT compatible? We are looking at that, but we're going to focus first on, the regular tokens, the ERC20 tokens and the BEP20 tokens, and, the kind of going multi-chain with the most common networks. NFT compatibility cross-chain is something a lot of people are interested in. There's probably a startup out there right now focused on that. We might eventually look at it if our customers ask, but I haven't seen, we know it's an issue in the space right now, but I honestly feel like it's probably better served by like a single startup, working on that issue. So, maybe someday we look at that, but for the moment, we don't have that on our roadmap, but we are looking at it. So, it's kind of interesting. Oh, I'm, I'd love to answer some questions on like product thinking kind of in the Web3. I think one of the issues, or one of the challenges I should say, about building a product is in Web 2, you really just needed to, people kind of have this playbook of you build software as a service, you have your client server architecture, you have a great UI, great user experience, you have beautiful user interface, and then you kind of launch your product. Maybe if you're B2B, you have a sales team, or if you're B2C, you just kind of get it everywhere and make it a freemium model. But in Web3, one of the biggest challenges is really the tokenomics part of building the product. Because as a product, as a product team, you have to integrate like in a whole economic model into your application if you're really working with tokens, and that brings it with a lot of challenges that are kind of I'd say there's starting to be a playbook around best practices with that, but we're very early on so far. So that's kind of an exciting thing for the product and the product building community, I think, to keep iterating on with that, but it makes things fun and very interesting. Um, any comments or questions around that?
Any questions from the audience for Josh?
Hi, Josh. I'm the co-founder from Izumi Finance, and
Nice to meet you.
yeah, it's very honor for me to listen to all your speech and introduction about Anchor. And also, I know that for now we are using the Infura, to
Mhm.
be honest. And also, I know there are some potential competitors like the Infstones and some others. So, how do you think about the competition in the for the future of data API and also the node service, and for the long-term development of the Anchor, how do you think about it? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, great. So I see this space as um, there's so much I could talk about with the competition. So Infura is owned by Consensus, and these are both Infura and Alchemy have built great solutions, to be honest. They're primarily focused on Ethereum, and they started branching out into Polygon. I think that just this past summer, in the last 6 months, they went multi-chain. Anchors, we've integrated over 50 chains. We have a lot of other validators and whatnot that we run out kind of outside of Anchor protocol in our first version as well. One of the things I will say is, these are those are service providers, right? They're service providers that really haven't built a Web3 business model. Their subscription to use Infura, you're probably paying $50 a month, $500 a month, $1,000 a month, whatever it is, and you're billing in your credit card. And so I think a couple things here. Why does decentralized infrastructure matter? Why should we use a protocol versus a subscription-based platform? So a couple things with this is like, we talked a little bit about historical data that is on the blockchain, right? And so, if you make like an Infura too powerful, let's say they start getting the majority of market share in the Ethereum-based community, right? And they're feeding kind of all the analytics apps that are out there that are saying what's happening in the market. Like imagine, and I'm sure they wouldn't do this, but imagine if they decided to arbitrage that, right? Where they delay maybe at a couple seconds, they're able to kind of manipulate the market, right? If they have enough control. And so, Web3, we really need to try to build infrastructure that's community owned, that stays decentralized and isn't just like VC backed, infrastructure like Alchemy is, right? And so, I think that that's a really important thing because the infrastructure is honestly like one of the most important pieces to this. It's like everyone's building on this, so it should be the thing that we really focus on decentralizing the most. And I've been kind of surprised, at the end of the day, do people care about decentralization? Well, it kind of remains to be seen. I think a lot, when you're building a project, you really just care about reliable infrastructure, right? And high performance infrastructure. But maybe as we progress this, we'll get more and more into people caring about decentralization.
Okay, thanks. May I add another question?
Sure.
Yeah, and acting as a decentralized platform, and how do you plan to support the other decentralized projects like DeFi projects or GameFi? Will you provide something different or some different incentives to onboard this kind of the decentralized projects? Thanks.
Yeah, we're literally working on that right now. So we've been very conservative with our token. Our token is traded on all the major exchanges: Binance, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, Binance US, all the major exchanges. Um, and we definitely are working on an incentive program, which we announced about a month or two ago, to bring in more projects, to this, and then again, those tokens go out to our node providers. So I think what's important also, I do want to say, is that if you go to Infura, you're basically like outsourcing your nodes to one company, right? And so like if they go down, you're going to be in trouble. Where, like I was saying earlier, with this, we have a lot of different node providers in different data centers on different networks, and so the reliability is a lot higher on something like Anker. So, we've actually never had a sustained downtime before in our 3+ years of doing this because of how we've, avoided using just like one single cloud platform. So yeah, I think we have a lot more marketing to do to kind of get the same market or the mind share that Infura has, but I'm excited for that challenge.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for all your answering. Yeah.
Yep. I see a couple more questions. Alex Lee, you had a question?
Yeah, man. Thanks. Hey, Josh. Alex. So our team built a hyper efficient stable sock. We're planning to go multi-chain. So we're very interested in your product actually. So I have a quick question about your bridge. Are you able to bridge effectively to non-EVM compatible chains? Like how, and also could you maybe elaborate how you plan to do that, because we're super interested.
Yeah, so one of the things that Anchor does is we also hold a lot of assets from our staking deposits and whatever. So whenever you create a bridge, you have to, at least the best way we've seen to do it, which has drawbacks as well, is you kind of have to create that honeypot where, there's going to be assets in a smart contract. And so smart contract security is very important. We have multi-signature technology that we've used, for managing all of our assets as well. That has to be incorporated. So the security is very, very important. I think the thing that makes bridges difficult is we haven't really found a way to actually decentralize that. Like it's going to have to be like a centralized solution, because we have to be able to take deposits and then release them on another chain or burn them or something like that, or lock them. And so I don't want to get too into details, but the short answer is yes, we can go non-EVM, though we are starting with EVM. Solana is definitely a big focus for us right now as we are getting more and more into the Solana ecosystem.
Cool, thanks for that. Yeah, looking forward to working together actually in the future.
Yeah, and we do a lot of partnerships. Like I said earlier, we've integrated over 50 different blockchains. Probably these 10 here are like the ones we focus on the most right now, but we do have we were one of the an early supporter of, so like Polygon when it was Matic. I think we met the Polygon team when it was like 3 or 4 people working there back in like 2017 or 2018 or something like that. And so, we love to support projects. Like we really are a community owned and operated protocol and project. So I'd love to collaborate. Okay, so
thank you.
I see a question around Solana being EVM compatible. Yes, I mean, like there's a lot of chains that have realized that they, need to be EVM compatible. Avalanche has done a lot of work to become EVM compatible on one of their chains as well. Solana's working on it. I think it's important, but there's pros and cons, right? So I don't think just a chain becoming EVM compatible solves everything, because you're going to lose some of those features, or you need to build a side chain. So more to come on that, but I think a lot of people are excited with Solana in particular right now because of the low gas fees and the speed of the network. It just feels very easy and fluid, and the user experience is very good, at least when the network's working, right? Solana has had some outages recently, but long term, these solutions will get better and better. I think the technology, like just to say something that I may not have made clear, is that there's always a trade-off that we've seen between performance and also decentralization. So, it's very, in today's world with kind of all the technology we have and all the frameworks and all the code samples we have, we can make a centralized system perform very, very well. But to build a decentralized system that also is high performance is a very difficult technical issue, as well as an architecture issue. And so a lot of these chains are addressing that and trying to get better and better. So Solana is a bit more centralized than Ethereum is. Maybe someone would say a lot more centralized, but the performance a lot higher. So, hopefully as they go EVM, they'll add more decentralization and, have a better solution on that. I do want to bring up another,
Yeah, sure.
Another solution that we have that I haven't talked too much about it. I'll show you guys our website because we're going to start doing more and more integrations. This is kind of our Anchor earn. I should be sharing my screen here in a second. There we go, Anchor earn, our liquid staking solution. So, the other thing we do is if you're familiar with Anchor runs quite a lot of validators as well as kind of our developer nodes. I've been mostly talking to you guys about the developer nodes tonight, but we do run a whole suite of validators and we make staking very, very easy using this DeFi suite. And so, something that we do is we have something called liquid staking. Here we're number 2 globally now for Ethereum liquid staking, Lido's number 1. We're rolling out BNB liquid staking soon here, but if you launch the app here, you can, use the DeFi. You guys can go see us. But essentially, what is liquid staking? Liquid staking is when you stake with Anchor, we issue you what's called a liquidity token or a liquid staking token that represents the voucher that represents your asset that you just staked. And then you can go use that voucher in DeFi while your staked assets are still earning, in the network. And so it effectively gives you extra earning opportunity on top of what you would earn with normal staking. And so what we've kind of seen over and over is that we are a great partner for, emerging layer 1s, emerging layer 2s as they go to market, because we can support them on the proof of stake infrastructure for the validators, as well as the developer full nodes, which is what I was talking about earlier. So, we want to do more integrations with DEXs and, whatnot with this product. We have a whole team that can, show you guys more on this. I won't go too far into it, but wanted to make you guys aware that we, do this. And I think this is going to be more and more interesting, as we talk a little bit about kind of what is Anchor. It's kind of like money embedded in infrastructure. Web 2, the financial infrastructure is completely separate from the cloud infrastructure. But I think where this is going is it's all going to be integrated. As I talked about, moving assets with code earlier, this will come in and be very important for that strategy. All right. So any questions? Happy to answer anything about Anchor, about building products in this space. Any of the challenges we've ran into or whatnot. All right. Well, you guys can always ask me and connect with me on Twitter. I'll post it here in the chat. It's just at Josh Neuroth. And once again, it's at Josh Neuroth, Neuroth. So, you can go out and my DMs are open. If you have any questions that you think of later, I'm happy to have a conversation over Twitter messaging.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Josh, for your time. I think you help a couple of guys here. There we go. Hey, one question from Binod. Does staking work on chain?
Can you explain, Binod, that question a bit more?
Sure. Hi, Josh. This is Binod. So we are building Neptune Mutual, a decentralized insurance protocol, and we take a lot of deposits, stablecoin deposits from the risk poolers, right? And the way to give them profit for the deposits that they do is to stake the available stable coins on external protocols, right? So we are building on Binance Smart Chain, we are building on Ethereum. So we would love to explore opportunities where we can lend the available liquidity so that we can maximize the profit for our liquidity providers.
Yeah, it's actually a perfect use case for you guys, because what you can do is you can take deposits from your users. You can then stake those deposits and then get our liquid staking token, and then you could borrow against it or provide liquidity in a liquidity pool. So there's many different things you can do with that. But I will tell you, that today we've just integrated and done liquid staking with Ethereum and then Avalanche, right, and Polygon. The next two chains that we're going to do are going to be Binance Smart Chain and also, Phantom. And so, as you know, as I said earlier, we operate one of the validators for Binance Smart Chain, and so, we're going to be the only, I believe, the only provider that has the liquid staking on Binance Smart Chain. So, definitely would love to chat and see if we can collaborate and help you guys out on that.
Sure. So thank you, Josh. So a follow-up question to that answer is, will there be any smart contracts, or how do we perform lending, right, or depositing or staking, right? Because the reason why I'm asking this question is our project or the protocol is fully decentralized, meaning that the lending or staking functionality happens automatically on chain without any person going there manually doing that, because we cannot take custody of user
That's
fund.
right. That's right. So our staking solution is completely non-custodial. So, users and protocols can delegate to our smart contract. So, we don't take possession of that crypto. So we should be able to work with you guys.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. Definitely an honor to be able to participate in this conversation. And I'm, just want to thank you guys for building in the Web3 ecosystem. And if there's anything Anchor can do, whether it's relationship capital, infrastructure, staking infrastructure, we would, love to collaborate and have a conversation.
Hey Josh, one question for me before I let you go. Very simple one. Don't worry about that. You mentioned about the Anker liquid staking, and the next two chains that you're gonna be supporting would be BSC and Phantom. I guess for everyone here, I guess most of them are currently on BSC, so it could be very interesting to understand more, especially with Binot's earlier question. When would be the timeline we could see the liquid staking support for BSC?
Sure. Yeah. So again, unannounced. You guys are getting a little bit of a preview from, some alpha around like what we're doing, but it's coming this quarter. I would say even in the next 30 days. So we're very close on releasing that.
Okay. Okay. And the best way to reach out for you to you pertaining to any form of potential partnership would be through a Twitter handle. Is that it? Or
Yeah.
Telegram?
I'll post both of these here, and you guys can. I'll post my Telegram as well, which is J0SH7. Happy to take. It's just easier for me. I sometimes get buried on Telegram, as many of you probably do as well. But Twitter is probably the best way to see it. And I'll put my email in here. It's josh@anchor.com if you prefer email too. So yeah.
All right. All right. Thanks a lot, Josh. Well, I mean, alternatively, I guess a more effective way to reach Josh as well would be to just ping the BSC team. We've always been connecting partners in our ecosystem, so we'll be happy to do the same for Anchor and any of you guys as well. Well, once again, very thank you for your time, Josh. Right.